Hello. Thank you so much for coming in today. It is a pleasure to meet you. To get us started, I want to keep this pretty conversational. We are looking for someone to join our front desk team who is not only organized but also great with people. I see from your resume that you are a recent graduate, so we know you are just starting your professional journey. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, thank you for asking. I am really excited to be here. I have been looking forward to this interview because I feel like the front desk role is such a vital part of any organization. Even though I am just starting out, I have always been the person in my student groups or volunteer work who likes to keep things organized and make sure everyone feels welcomed, so I am eager to apply those skills in a professional setting.
That is a great mindset to have. Since this is an entry-level position, we are more interested in your fundamental understanding of how a front desk operates and your willingness to learn. Let us dive right in with some basics. In a busy office, you will be handling a lot of phone traffic. Just to make sure we are on the same page, could you explain to me the difference between an inbound and an outbound call?
Yes, absolutely. An inbound call is basically when someone from the outside, like a customer or a client, reaches out to the business. They are initiating the contact, usually because they need help, have a question, or want to book an appointment. On the other hand, an outbound call is when the business initiates the contact. That would be when I or someone on my team calls a client to follow up on a request, confirm an appointment, or perhaps make a sales call. So the fundamental difference really just comes down to who starts the conversation.
Perfect. Simple and clear. Now, as you know, different industries have different requirements. If you are working in a medical office versus a law firm or a bank, the rules change. What specific industry knowledge do you think is crucial for a front desk professional to have? And since you are a fresher, how would you go about acquiring that knowledge if we hired you?
I believe industry knowledge is absolutely crucial because it allows the front desk person to understand the specific needs of the clients and, more importantly, comply with the legal regulations of that field. For example, if I were working in healthcare, knowing basic medical terminology and HIPAA regulations is non-negotiable because it ensures patient privacy and keeps the operation running smoothly. In a finance setting, I would need to understand common transaction types and compliance rules to handle client inquiries with confidence.
And as for the acquisition part, how do you actually learn that stuff when you are starting from zero?
Since I am just starting my career, I would be very proactive. I would start by taking industry-specific online courses or attending any workshops the company provides. I also think shadowing experienced colleagues is one of the fastest ways to learn the nuances that you cannot find in a manual. I would also make it a habit to read industry publications and stay updated on current trends. For me, the key is to be a sponge and apply that knowledge daily until it becomes second nature.
I like that proactive approach. Let us talk about the social dynamics of the job. You will be talking to everyone from the CEO to a frustrated delivery driver to a first-time client. How do you adjust your tone and style when speaking to different types of people?
I think the goal is to adapt the communication style based on who is in front of me while remaining professional. When I am speaking with clients, my priority is to be professional, polite, and very clear. I want to build trust and show them that they are respected and valued. However, when I am speaking with my fellow employees or teammates, I can be more direct and supportive. The focus there shifts more toward teamwork, guidance, and efficiency. In both cases, I believe the key is to listen carefully and observe their reactions. If I notice a client is feeling anxious, I soften my tone. If a colleague is in a rush, I get straight to the point. It is all about adapting to fit their needs and expectations in that moment.
That is a very mature way of looking at it. Now let us get into the weeds a bit. Front desk work can be a paradox. Some days are incredibly slow and tedious, and other days are absolute chaos. Let us start with the chaos. What does multitasking actually mean to you in the context of an administrative role?
To me, multitasking in an admin role is not necessarily about doing 5 things at the exact same second, but rather handling multiple responsibilities simultaneously without losing focus or efficiency. It is about the ability to switch gears quickly. For instance, I might be in the middle of organizing digital files, but then the phone rings, and at the same time, a visitor walks through the door. Multitasking is the ability to pause the filing, greet the visitor with a smile, answer the phone, and then return to the filing without making a mistake in any of those tasks. The key is prioritization and time management to ensure that everything gets done accurately and on time, regardless of how many things are happening at once.
Speaking of high-pressure moments, imagine a scenario where you have a burst of high-volume, simultaneous incoming calls. The phones are ringing off the hook. Describe what you think the ideal process is for handling that kind of surge.
I think the ideal process involves a combination of preparation and efficient distribution. First, the technical side is important. Having a phone system with call queuing and automated greetings helps manage the caller's expectations so they know they are in a queue. From a staff perspective, we should have scripts or guidelines for the most common inquiries. This allows us to provide accurate answers quickly without having to hunt for information every time. If the volume truly exceeds our capacity, I believe in having an overflow plan. This could mean redirecting calls to a voicemail with a clear promise of a callback time, or temporarily bringing in additional staff to help. After the rush is over, I think it is important to do a post-call analysis to see why the surge happened and if there is a way to improve the process for next time.
Now let us shift to the physical space. You are at the desk and you see someone walk in. They look lost, confused, maybe a bit overwhelmed by the size of the building. How do you handle that?
I would immediately approach them with a friendly and welcoming demeanor. I would make eye contact and offer assistance in a calm, professional manner. I would start with a simple, open greeting like, "Hello, how can I help you today?" I think that immediately puts people at ease and lets them know they are in a safe place to ask for help. I would be very patient and attentive because someone who looks lost is often feeling a bit vulnerable or embarrassed. I would listen carefully to where they need to go and then provide clear step-by-step directions. If the layout of the building is complex or if they seem particularly confused, I would not just point them in a direction. I would offer to personally escort them to their destination to make sure they actually get there.
I appreciate the offer to walk them there. That is a high level of service. Now let us talk about the less glamorous part of the job. Data privacy. You mentioned HIPAA earlier. Can you explain the importance of those regulations in an administrative setting?
HIPAA and similar data privacy regulations are absolutely critical because they protect the most sensitive information a person has. In an administrative setting, we are often the gatekeepers of medical records, financial data, and personal contact information. If that data is accessed by unauthorized people or leaked through a breach, it can cause devastating harm to the client and legal catastrophe for the company. Following these regulations builds a foundation of trust. Clients need to know that when they give us their information, it is handled securely and confidentially. For a front desk professional, this means following strict protocols for how we store files, how we share information, and how we dispose of data, like shredding documents instead of just throwing them in the trash.
Right. And beyond just the law, there is an ethical side to this. What ethical considerations should a front desk person keep in mind regarding customer data, like GDPR or HIPAA?
Ethically, it goes beyond just avoiding a fine. It is about the fundamental right to privacy. A front desk professional must ensure that personal information is only accessed or shared when there is proper authorization. There is also the ethics of transparency. Customers should be informed about how their data is being used, and they should give their consent. Another huge ethical point is discretion in the physical environment. I believe it is crucial to avoid discussing sensitive client information in public areas where other visitors might overhear. Even if it is not a formal breach of a written rule, it is ethically wrong to compromise a client's privacy just because it is a convenient place to have a conversation.
That leads perfectly into a tricky scenario. What if you are sitting at your desk and you accidentally overhear a sensitive conversation between two managers or a manager and a client that was not meant for your ears? How do you react?
My first instinct would be to immediately stop listening and, if possible, physically remove myself from the situation. Respecting privacy and confidentiality is a cornerstone of professional behavior. If I cannot leave the area because I am stationed at the desk, I would focus intently on my own work and avoid engaging in or acknowledging the conversation in any way. I would treat the information as if I never heard it. Later, if I felt it was appropriate and would actually help the managers, I might discreetly mention to them that the area is a bit too open and their conversation was overheard just so they can take precautions in the future. But in the moment, my priority is to be invisible and maintain the confidentiality of the office.
Let us move into some conflict management. You are new, but you are observant. Imagine you are working with a colleague who keeps making the same administrative mistakes over and over. It is starting to affect your work. How do you address that tactfully?
I believe the key to addressing repeated mistakes is to focus on the solution rather than the blame. I would not call them out in front of others. Instead, I would ask for a private, calm conversation. I would clearly explain the impact of the mistakes, not by saying you are doing this wrong, but by saying when this step is missed, it makes the next part of the process difficult. I would use open-ended questions to see if there is an underlying issue. Maybe the instructions are unclear, or maybe they feel overwhelmed by their workload. I would offer my support, perhaps by suggesting we go over the process together or creating a small checklist we can both use. Once we agree on a way forward, I would document the discussion and follow up later to see if the changes are helping.
That is a very diplomatic approach. But what if the conflict isn't with a peer but with leadership? Imagine you have two different department heads who give you conflicting instructions regarding a new protocol. One says do it this way, the other says do it that way. How do you handle that without upsetting either of them?
First, I would remain calm and professional. I would not pick a side or tell one manager that the other disagrees. I would start by documenting the specific discrepancies in the instructions so I have a clear record. Then I would approach each manager individually to confirm their expectations and try to understand the context behind their request. If the conflict persists and I cannot resolve it by simply asking for clarification, I would politely explain the situation to both of them. I might say I want to make sure I am executing this protocol exactly as intended, but I have received two different sets of instructions, and I would appreciate it if we could align on the correct path. If they still cannot agree, I would escalate it to a higher authority like a senior director to make a final decision. My goal is to stay neutral and ensure the final resolution aligns with the organization's goals.
Let us talk about the high-stress interactions. You are the face of the company. A visitor comes in and they are visibly agitated or upset. They are raising their voice or acting out. What steps do you take to de-escalate that situation?
The most important thing is for me to remain calm and composed. If I get agitated, the situation will only escalate. I would speak in a soft, steady tone to show that I am listening and that I want to help. I would acknowledge their feelings immediately, something like, I can see that this is very frustrating for you, and I want to help resolve this. I would avoid interrupting them or arguing, and I would give them the space to express their concerns. Then I would ask open-ended questions such as, can you tell me more about what happened? So I can get to the root of the problem. Once I understand the issue, I would offer a clear solution or a concrete next step, even if that step is just escalating the matter to a manager who has more authority to fix it. Throughout the whole thing, I would maintain a respectful and patient demeanor to help lower their stress levels.
Now let us turn the dial up. Instead of just a regular visitor, it is a VIP client. They are extremely important to the company, they are visibly upset, and they are demanding to speak to the CEO immediately. You know the CEO is in a meeting or cannot be disturbed. How do you manage this while maintaining professional composure and discretion?
This is a high-stakes situation, so I would start by remaining very calm and acknowledging their status and their frustration without making promises I cannot keep. I would listen actively to understand the core of their issue and reassure them that their concerns are being taken very seriously. I would explain the situation regarding the CEO with discretion, without making it sound like the CEO is simply ignoring them. I might say the CEO is currently in a scheduled commitment, but I am going to escalate this matter immediately. I would then offer to involve a senior manager or another authorized representative who can address the issue right away. The goal here is to make the VIP client feel heard and valued, while protecting the company's professionalism and the CEO's schedule. I would maintain an empathetic tone and keep them comfortable in a private area if possible, ensuring the resolution is handled efficiently.
I like that you mentioned moving them to a private area, that shows good instinct. Now let us get back to the day-to-day. Admin work can be repetitive. Filing data entry, updating calendars. How do you maintain your composure and focus when the work feels tedious?
I handle repetitive tasks by changing my perspective on them. First, I focus on the purpose behind the task. I remind myself that if the filing is wrong or the data entry is inaccurate, it creates a huge problem for someone else down the line. Understanding how my small task contributes to the bigger picture keeps me motivated. Second, I break the work into smaller chunks. Instead of looking at a mountain of paperwork, I set mini goals for myself, which gives me a sense of progress. Third, I use simple techniques like deep breathing or taking a quick 2-minute stretch break to reset my focus if I start to feel frustrated. Ultimately, I remind myself that consistency and accuracy are what keep an organization running smoothly. That sense of responsibility reinforces my patience.
You mentioned accuracy. Let us talk about when things go wrong. Since you are a fresher, you might not have a corporate example, but perhaps from an internship or a school project. Describe a time when a failure in communication or a broken process caused a significant problem. What role did you play in resolving it?
I can give you an example from an internship I had in a small guest house. There was a major miscommunication between the front desk and the housekeeping staff. A VIP guest arrived, but their room was completely unprepared. It happened because the front desk failed to update the housekeeping log after a last-minute room change, and housekeeping just followed the original assignment. I was the one at the desk when the guest arrived. I took immediate responsibility by personally apologizing to the guest and acknowledging the mistake. To make it right, I offered them a complimentary upgrade to a better room that was already clean and ensured they were settled within minutes. After the guest was happy, I didn't just stop there. I held a brief team meeting with the housekeeping staff to review the communication breakdown. Together, we implemented a double-check system for room assignments and introduced a shared digital log so that any change made at the front desk was instantly visible to the cleaning crew. It turned a bad situation into a process improvement.
That is a great example of taking ownership. Now a quick-fire scenario. You are in the middle of a task, maybe you are on a deadline for a report and the phone rings. What is the very first thing you do?
The first thing I do is acknowledge the call by answering it promptly. Even if I am incredibly busy, ignoring a ringing phone is unprofessional. I would answer with a polite greeting and then honestly but professionally explain that I am currently occupied. I would ask if I could call them back in a few minutes, or if there is something brief I can assist them with right now. This shows the caller they are respected while allowing me to manage my current task.
Good. What if it is not just one thing? What if you have multiple, simple tasks coming in at the same time? Not a crisis, but just a lot of small things. How do you handle that volume?
When multiple simple tasks hit at once, I rely on prioritization based on urgency and importance. I take a few seconds to quickly assess each task to see which ones need an immediate answer and which ones can wait 10 minutes. I also try to group similar tasks together. For example, if I have 3 emails to send and 2 phone calls to make, I will handle the calls first and then sit down to knock out all the emails in one go. This is more efficient than jumping back and forth. If I feel the workload is becoming too much, I would not hesitate to ask a teammate if they could help with one of the smaller tasks. Staying organized and keeping a calm head prevents those simple tasks from feeling overwhelming.
Final question for you. We talked about conflicting instructions from department heads earlier. Let us refine that. If 2 different department heads give you instructions that are not just different, but completely opposite, and they are both insistent, how do you handle that specifically?
In that case, the first step is to remain completely neutral and professional. I would clarify the details of each request to make sure I fully understand the why behind each instruction. I would then assess the urgency and the potential impact of each task. If the instructions are truly opposite, I would politely bring both department heads into the loop. I would say something like, I have received 2 different directives regarding this process, and I want to ensure I am following the correct protocol to avoid any errors. I would ask them to align on a solution together. If they are unable to agree, I would then escalate the issue to a higher authority, such as a senior manager or a director, to make the final call. The most important thing is that I do not try to guess which one is right. I communicate clearly, stay neutral, and ensure the final decision is the one that best serves the organization's goals.
I really appreciate the detail in your answers. Even though you are just starting out, you have a very strong grasp of the fundamentals of administrative work and the soft skills required to manage a front desk. Do you have any questions for me about the role or the company?
I do. I was wondering, for someone in this position, what does a typical day look like in terms of the balance between guest interaction and behind-the-scenes administrative work? And also, what are the most common challenges that a new person in this role usually faces during their first few months here?
Those are excellent questions. Typically, it is about a 60-40 split. 60% of your time is spent as the face of the company, greeting people and handling calls, and 40% is the administrative backbone work. As for challenges, most new hires struggle with the initial learning curve of our specific software and the pressure of multitasking during peak hours. But we provide plenty of training and support to get you up to speed.
That sounds like a great balance. I actually enjoy that mix of interacting with people and having the focused time to get organized. Thank you so much for explaining that.
You are very welcome. Well, that covers everything on my end. We will be reviewing all the candidates and will get back to you by the end of the week. It was a pleasure meeting you.
It was a pleasure meeting you too. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you.